Today, I want to talk about personality, specifically where nature ends and neuroplasticity begins. Now, due to my work in related to imposter syndrome, I've been having a lot of conversations lately about identity, which is why I'm starting off with the statement, it's just who I am. I've heard this statement throughout my career as a senior leader, but even more so as an executive coach. And to be honest, the statement gets a little under my skin because while part of that statement may be true, we do come into this world with some degree of our personality. Our personality is not fixed. From the time that we're born, our brain begins rewiring itself in response to everything we experience. When we say it's just who I am, it's likely more accurate to say it's who I've become. Let's begin with how we come into this world. These are my boys. Tyler is the little cowboy who is the outdoor enthusiast. He holds 3 martial art black belts. He's an avid fisherman and a self-proclaimed outdoor survivalist. Sebastian, on the right, is the traditionalist. He's the intellectual who I get to share my passion for neuroscience with. He's a teacher and the one that never misses Sunday dinner with his family, even though he doesn't live at home anymore. Tyler acts quickly. Sebastian takes time to plan. Same house, same parents, completely different human beings right from the start. And if you have more than one child, you may have experienced something similar. And in speaking about how we arrive, I'm going to be referencing the colors that personality dimensions assessment associates with different personality types. It's one of my favorite tools for enhancing both emotional and social intelligence. Authentic blue describes the connector, the part of us who builds trust, connection, and belonging through empathy. Inquiring green describes the strategist in us, the big picture thinker who brings curiosity, insight, and thoughtful analysis. Organized gold describes the steward who plans, creates clarity, structure, and dependable follow through. And resourceful orange describes the action taker who turns possibilities into confident, decisive, and quick action. Now, none of us is just one color. We're all a blend. But it's not uncommon for us to lean towards one or two of the tendencies associated with the different types. So I'd like to guide you through an exercise. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the content for each of the colors, describing the color's strengths, motivators, how the type appears to others, needs, and major stressors. As I read the descriptors, consider whether it sounds like I'm describing you. And if so, make a note of that color, as it may leave you with a sense of which parts of your personality were likely there from the start. And if you struggle a bit, pay particular attention to these stressors. And don't be afraid to change colors if you feel the next description is a better fit. This is not a formal assessment, but rather a taste of color activity. Let's get started with gold. Golds at their best are dependable and responsible, structured, organized, and consistently follow through. They're punctual and reliable. They're motivated by rules and procedures, detailed planning, traditions, and to others, gold appear as parental and serving. Caretakers, they're meticulous, often carrying a to-do list with them. And the difference between gold carrying a to-do list and one of the other colors carrying a to-do list is that golds live by their to-do lists. Golds need clear plans, structure, and well-defined roles. Major stressors are sudden change, and sometimes change in general, ambiguity, disorder, and unclear expectations. So if I'm describing you, make a note of that. You may have some strong tendencies towards blue traits, or sorry, gold traits. Green, inquiring greens are at their best, when they're at their best, are curious and analytical, architects of change, solvers of complex problems. Greens are motivated by science, facts, logic, and data. They thrive on progress. To others, green appears as analytical, big picture thinkers, and they use clear and direct language. Greens need knowledge, a feeling of competence. They need time, data, and space to think it through. Major stressors include being rushed, uncertainty, and decisions made without enough information. If that's a description of you or you're resonating with that, maybe you have some strong leaning towards the green personality traits. Then there is authentic blue. Blues are at their best, or when they're at their best, are empathetic and emotionally aware. They're trust builders. They create a sense of belonging. Blues are motivated by harmony and unity, human potential, and self-improvement. To others, blues may appear as warm, attentive, and genuinely interested, supporting and caring, and often sensitive. Blues need meaningful connections, relationships, and harmony. Major stressors include guilt, conflict, emotional disconnection, and feeling unappreciated. And finally, resourceful orange. Orange, at their best, are energetic and adaptable, confident and decisive. Orange are motivated by exciting possibilities, challenges, expediency. And to others, orange appear as energetic and fun, spontaneous and fast moving. Oranges need freedom and variety, space, and a degree of autonomy. Major stressors include restriction, repetition, and slow or overly rigid processes. I'm curious. Now, I've provided just a general overview. I know it's brief, but has anybody sort of been able to pinpoint maybe the characteristics or the color that matches their personality? I'm curious. Just raise your hand if you have. Yeah, a few. Yeah, Andy, and you will see parts of you in all of them because we are a blend of all of these characteristics. Oh yes, 50% gold, 50% green blue. I love that. I love how you were able to distinguish even the different parts. I think that's a place where we build our self-awareness, and that's the part that supports emotional intelligence. So Patricia's saying mostly blue. We've got Kristen saying blue and orange. David said yes, green and blue. And there's some really specific relationships between some of those characteristics that I just don't have time to go into today, but I just encourage you to learn more about it because honestly, it is one of the most powerful tools that I have come across in relation to supporting that emotional and social intelligence. But here's the thing, we may arrive with biology, But then biology meets our external environment and adapts to our experiences. You know, the family we grew up in, what we were taught in school, the strategies we learned to keep us safe, memories of what worked and what didn't. At home, wow, I can't talk today. That adaptation has a name, and it's neuroplasticity. So here's just a quick little video that I created just to describe neuroplasticity. So, neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change its own structure and function in response to experience. Every time we repeat a thought, a belief, or a behavior, we strengthen the pathway that supports it. And repetition is one of the ways that the brain decides what matters. And I'll go into more detail in a bit, but for now, I want to draw your attention to the fact that most of us are carrying beliefs and behaviors that are not part of our personality, but rather were adopted because at some point they helped us feel safe. They served a purpose. The problem is that some of those patterns no longer serve us, and we may not even realize we're still running them. And then we go so far as to say, it's just who I am. Now, for many years, I served in the military reserves. And then, even after that, I spent a considerable amount of time, over 2 decades, working with and supporting the military. One night during an exercise, I was ordered to scale a wall. And before I had even tried, I can't came out of my mouth. And it shouldn't surprise you that the phrase I can't is not one that military officers find especially compelling. And to be fair, I was wrong every single time I said it. I said I can't far more often than I would actually like to admit. It had become so automatic that it impacted what I truly believed I was capable of. But it wasn't an accurate assessment. It was just a well practiced response to challenge and a way for me to stay safe, which, by the way, is what our brain is wired to do. It's wired to keep us safe. It's not wired to help us be successful or live our best lives. It's designed to keep us safe. So if we're trying to do something that requires a degree of risk or uncertainty, that's why sometimes it's going to feel like we're swimming upstream. But it was within my experience working with the military that I began to learn about the brain and neuroplasticity. Military training is designed to repeat action until the unfamiliar becomes familiar. The difficult becomes manageable, and I can't begins to lose its grip. They rewired the I can't out of me. That's neuroplasticity in practice. Now, that was an example of neuroplasticity related to a belief. I want to share another example in relation to behaviors and tie this back to personality dimensions. Now, this part is not backed by science. It's based on my own observations as a leader, an executive coach, and the work that I'm doing in imposter syndrome. And I'm still studying this. But I noticed that two people can experience the same flash of uncertainty and respond differently. And the closer I looked, I started to see patterns forming. And they weren't personality traits, they were protective strategies: control, connection, certainty, and significance. And for those of you who might be familiar with Dr. David Rock's SCARF model of social threats, these protective strategies may sound familiar to SCARF, which stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. What I noticed was that there seemed to be a gravitational pull for some personality traits to be drawn to specific protective strategies. The orange need for autonomy may be driven to take control and do more and exhibit behaviors such as taking it all on or stepping in, controlling and struggling to hand things off because if something goes wrong, it's going to have their name attached to it. Blues, due to their empathetic and need to belong, may be driven by connection and the need to please more. They may soften their words, accommodate, and let disagreement go because somewhere along the way, belonging became safer than conflict. They also say yes when they mean no, or may say yes when they mean no. And if that's you, you may want to attend my September 24th NPM roundtable discussion, saying yes when you mean no, the neuroscience of the people-pleasing pattern. But back to the behaviors. Green's thirst for knowledge and certainty may be driven to know more. They may over-prepare, take more courses, or stay quiet until they're certain. And because certainty is rarely available in life, they can spend a very long time waiting to feel ready. Gold's need to belong may be driven by significance and the need to be more. They may achieve success, but then quickly dismiss the achievement and then immediately reach for the next one because stopping long enough to believe that we've done enough can feel dangerous. So, same need, different behaviors. Now, you may have heard the phrase neurons that fire together, wire together. That means that any frequently repeated thought or action physically restructures your brain. But neuroplasticity doesn't mean that we need to rewire who we are. It's an opportunity to change the patterns that have become automatic that no longer serve us. So if empathy is part of who we are, the goal is not to be less empathetic. Or if freedom matters deeply, the goal is not to become somebody who loves rigid structure. Or if order helps us think, we don't need to become spontaneous just to prove that we've changed. Or if we have an insatiable desire for knowledge, we don't need to stop asking questions just to prove that we can act. The work isn't about sanding ourselves down into some ideal personality. It's about separating tendency from compulsion. And here's an example and a way to distinguish. My personality is primarily blue. I have a natural tendency to be empathetic, caring, and giving. I don't want to lose that because it's part of who I am and part of what makes me successful at what I do. But I also don't want to fall into the behavioral trap of please more, which I used to when I worked as a senior leader. And that led me to constant states of burnout. So I could now ask a reflective question. Am I saying yes because I want to say yes? Or am I compelled to say yes because I will be guilt-ridden and concerned about the damage to the relationship if I don't say yes? One is a healthy path. The other one keeps me on the path of burnout. There's another statement that gets under my skin, and it typically follows. It's just who I am. And it's, I'm set in my ways. And I said I was going to come back to neuroplasticity, and now's that time. You may have heard that the brain is fully formed at approximately 25. It's a nice, tidy statement, but brains are not tidy. And more recent research shows that the brain continues to change throughout our lives. Some forms of change become easier or harder with age, but the capacity to learn, adapt, and reorganize remains, which cuts both ways because the same brain that helped build an automatic response 20 or even 40 years ago is still strengthening what we repeatedly think, feel, and do. The brain adapts in three ways. One, it strengthens connection through repeated thoughts and behaviors. Two, it adjusts for connections that we use less of, meaning use it or lose it, which is especially relevant when it comes to something like memory. Memory is like a mental muscle. Use it and it remains strong. Don't and it slips away. It's not like us losing our memory as a factor of age is not accurate. And then we're learning too that new neurons can form, although this is still being studied. So over time, it looks like this. In early life, the connections form at an extraordinary speed. We take the world in through our senses, and the brain rewires what it finds. In young adulthood, the networks for planning, judgment, and self control begin to mature. We get better at pausing before we act. Well, at least most of us do. In midlife, the brain applies everything we've learned, everything we've lived through. It learns and it reorganizes and it adapts. And later in life, learning does not stop. It just simply asks more of us, perhaps more repetition. Support might be needed, but it doesn't stop. But there is something else we need to consider, and it adds a layer of complexity. And it's something that we rarely talk about or consider. And that is that every one of those connections was built from experience. But experience is not neutral. All experience is relative to two things: what our senses take in and what our mind does with it. Perception is what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, combined with the references that our mind attaches to the situation. So the brain doesn't passively record the world exactly as it is. It interprets what our senses take in through the lens of what it already knows and expects. Meaning, we're not seeing the room, we're seeing our history of rooms that we've been in. And that's great news because references are not facts, they're wiring. And we know that we can change that wiring.